South Korea intends to propose master plans for environmental business. Let's examine the prospects of South Korea's environmental industry. President Park Geun-hye attended the APEC summit and ASEAN meetings. We will talk about the accomplishments from her visit and the significance of the ASEAN. South Korea enters an aging society. We will explore the new ICT technologies embedded in the silver industries, including the healthcare of elderly people. Kerosene heaters are again under the spotlight amid a recent camping boom. We visit Paseco, which holds the biggest kerosene heater market share in the world. What attracts foreign investors to North Korea? And what are the obstacles blocking foreigners from investing in North Korea? We explore the attractiveness and limitations of investment in North Korea.
Hello, I'm Andrew Salmon, and welcome to Bizline. As you can see, it is a beautiful day here in Seoul, and we have a very full show for you. We're covering everything from kerosene heaters to environmental technologies, from multilateral trade diplomacy to North Korean investment. So do keep your eyes on the screen. But before we go to those and other features, let's first take a look at all the breaking business and economic news hitting headlines across South Korea this week.
Business boomed for Korean shipbuilders in the first 9 months of this year. Data from the London-based Clarkson Research Services shows that the combined orders for Korean ship contracts rose 88.7% in the first 3 quarters of this year compared to the same period last year. Samsung Electronics has released the world's first ever smartphone with a curved display. The 14-centimeter long Galaxy Round went on sale October 10th in Korea, with a price tag around $930. Meanwhile, Samsung's rival Apple has announced that it will release its newest iPhone models in Korea on October 25th. The base fare for taxis in Seoul increased to 3,000 won, which is about $2.80. This is up 25% from the previous 2,400 won, or about $2.20. This is the first time in 4 years that taxi fares in Seoul went up, following an outcry from taxi operators who said that current fares did not match inflation. Korea and Indonesia have agreed to sign a currency swap deal worth $10 billion. The agreement was reached during a meeting in Washington between Korean Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok and his Indonesian counterpart. At the same meeting, the head of Korea's central bank, Kim Chung-soo, signed a 3-year currency swap deal worth $5.4 billion with the United Arab Emirates.
As you can see just from looking around, green is the colour of our environment. But green is also the colour of this stuff, money. And indeed, there are big bucks to be made in the environmental services sector globally. Now, last week, in the first of a 2-part series, we met several South Korean companies doing business in the environment in Shanghai, in China. This week, we conclude this 2-part series by meeting more South Korean companies doing more of this kind of business, but a little different, in Yantai, also in China.
More than 500 kilometers northeast of Beijing, China, and similar distance west of Seoul, Korea, the city of Yantai is a site for a grand Korean environmental project. This region is famous for apple cultivation, as it supplies a quarter of all apples sold in China. And maintaining a safe water supply is essential to its residents and farmers. The Korean firm KC Rivertech has been here since September 2012 for a project to reduce non-point source pollution, polluted runoff from agricultural areas draining into the river. The project is near its final stage and getting some finishing touches. The reservoir was in dire need of this project as it was being heavily polluted by fertilizers and pesticides. The area lacked attention, which made the situation worse. The farmers in the region thought that it was time for a serious change.
这个烟台市是中国的苹果的主产地， 它的苹果历史很久远，也非常有名，这样的话，这个农田的施肥和农药的施用，这会造成了很多的非碘源污染，这一套技术的应用，我认为对烟台市整个农业的污染能起到一个指导性的意义，对它防止污染能起到关键的作用。
The system minimizes non-point source pollution from agricultural land draining into the river. Pollution reduction fence, vegetation, treatment wetland, as well as floating wetland developed by the company and implemented at Yantai effectively removes non-point source pollutants. Residents of Yantai have high expectations of the changes to come and already feel the difference.
这个环境对我们国园很有好处，最起码虫害减少了，环境美化了。我们希望这样的项目在我们这儿多搞几处。
水果比以前更好吃了，没有什么别的污染。我们自己也喝这个跟前的水，比以前好喝了。没有以前像以前养鱼的时候，不是都有那个鱼腥味呀那样子，现在都没有那种鱼腥味了。
However, the environmental project in Yantai isn't limited to the local region, but has a positive effect on a grander scale.
중국의 산동반도는 황해 서해를 끼고 우리나라랑 인접해 있습니다. 그래서 이쪽에서 오염되는 그 문제가 우리나라에 직접 영향을 주기 때문에 중국하고 또 한국 환경부 같이 해서 이러한 중국 그 산동반도를 통해서 황해로 오염되는 물질을 저감시키고 또 수질을 개선하는 것이 결국은 중국과 우리나라 전체에 그 도움이 되는 중요한 일이겠죠.
One of the systems applied in the Yantai environmental project is the floating wetland, and it is also an important achievement and the result of support from the Ministry of Environment. It is also an example of how the Korean government supports overseas environmental projects from the early stages of research and development.
환경부에서 좋은 기술이니까 국제공동 현지화 사업을 통해서 외국에 좀 이렇게 도입할 수 있는 방안을 한번 마련해 보는 게 어떻겠냐 해서 저희가 환경부에 국제공동화 사업을 신청을 했고 거기서 우수한 성적으로 저희가 당선이 됐습니다. 돼서 중국의 현지에 이제 알아보다가 그쪽이 이제 적지여서 그쪽에 이제 저희가 적용을 하게 된 거고요.
As such, there are projects that receive full support from the government at their research and development stage when they are deemed essential to improve the quality of our life. And for us, and to keep the environment cleaner and safe, there are so many themes to venture on.
최근에 그 지식 기반 서비스 사업이라든가 환경 안전 보건 관련 사업 그리고 기후 변화에 관련된 사업들이 아주 유명한 분야로 떠오르고 있습니다. 더 나아가서 그 생물 자원을 활용하는 환경 산업 이런 것들도 주목을 받고 있고요. 다 아시다시피 최근에 이제 기후 변화가 전 세계적으로 이슈가 되면서 기후 변화의 원인 물질을 어떻게 삭감하느냐 이런 부분도 중요하지만 여기에 기후 변화에 대해서 어떻게 적응해 나갈 거냐 이 부분에 초점을 맞춰서 새로운 산업을 발굴한다면 이런 부분들도 새로운 환경 시장의 유망 분야로 키워나갈 수 있다고 볼 수 있습니다.
Korea's environmental industry based on technology is in the process of expansion, but still lacks competitive edge when compared with other advanced nations. More than 80% of the businesses in the domestic environmental industry consists of small and medium-sized companies. In order to help them gain a competitive edge, the government has provided support, and its policies have actually provided more opportunities for such SMEs to export their businesses overseas. The government support is conducted in 4 stages, even before finding a project and winning the contract, through a one-stop service. It starts from establishing strategy and building its ground to start the project, which requires field research. The government also supports through its localized overseas support centers and by providing consultation and marketing.
지금까지 중국, 동남아, 중남미 이런 국가들에 저희가 마스터 플랜을 수립을 해주고 거기에 따라서 기업이 들어가서 환경 산업을 수출할 수 있게끔 그렇게 지원을 해왔습니다. 근데 이게 단발성에 그치지 않고 일회성 이벤트가 아니고 이런 사업들이 지속될 수 있도록 우리 기업들에게 정보도 제공을 하고 기술 경쟁력을 키워나갈 수 있는 뒷받침이 되는 정책들을 개발해서 우리 수출 산업이 진짜 21세기의 큰 성장 동력이 될 수 있도록 지원을 아끼지 않을 예정입니다.
Finding means to improve polluted environment is not a choice anymore, but a necessity. Korea is implementing master plans to improve the environment and trying to export the technology. The move is all the more meaningful as it provides direction which the global environmental industry should pursue. The goal to make the Earth a cleaner place to live in will be achieved with the efforts of many Koreans working in many corners of the world.
It's been a busy week for President Park Geun-hye. She has been engaged in a range of multilateral summit diplomacy on the fringes of a range of multilateral summits in Southeast Asia. Why so much interest in Southeast Asia? What's been going on at these summits? What are her aims? What have been the outcomes? To answer some of these questions, we have with us a distinguished fellow from the Korea Institute of Economic Policy. Dr. Kang Daechang, it's a pleasure to have you on Bizline. Thanks for being here. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, let me just go through this range of summits she's been attending. She's been at the APEC, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. She's been at the South Korea ASEAN Summit, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. She's been at the ASEAN Plus 3 Summit and the East Asia Summit meeting. What are the general aims she's had in this range of summits?
ASEAN takes lead in Asian regionalism. Except APEC, ASEAN provides platforms for Korea Asian Summit, ASEAN Plus 3 Summit, and EAS. Korea ASEAN Summit, ASEAN Plus 3 Summit, and EAS are held annually as sideline meetings of ASEAN Summit. At ASEAN Plus 3 Summit and EAS, only the member states of ASEAN host the summit. The 4 summits provide opportunities of multilateral as well as bilateral meetings among Asia-Pacific leaders. APEC is a forum for economic cooperation in Asia-Pacific, as the name indicates. It addresses economic agenda in general and trade liberalization and investment facilitation in particular. APEC deals with economic affairs only. Thus, APEC calls its highest meeting officially as Economic Leaders Meeting instead of Summit, and participant entities as members, member economies, or economies, rather than member states. That's why Taiwan and Hong Kong are members of APEC, although they are not recognized as sovereign states. APEC operates on voluntary cooperation basis with non-binding enforcement mechanism. It provides long-term vision for economic growth. It is a useful forum to share information of economic policies and encourage policy coordination. At Korea ASEAN Summit, President of Korea discusses broad subjects on common interests with ASEAN member states leaders. Especially, they address the economic issues at the summit. ASEAN cooperates with influential states outside of Southeast Asia. ASEAN calls them dialogue partners. Korea expressed its interest to cooperate with ASEAN since 1977, but became a sectoral dialogue partner of ASEAN in 1989. The dialogue with the sectoral dialogue partner is limited to economic issues such as trade, investments, and tourism. It was because Korea was considered as a developing country those days. However, ASEAN-Korean dialogue meeting held in 1990, and Korea became a full dialogue partner. With a full dialogue partner, ASEAN discusses security issues as well as economic and cultural issues. ASEAN Plus 3 is a consultation mechanism in which ASEAN discusses broad issues with China, Japan, and Korea altogether. It deals with regional security, economic cooperation, and cultural exchange. Especially the economic agenda is the central theme of it. ASEAN Plus 3 is an important mechanism to Northeast countries. Although China, Japan, and Korea are economically closely connected, the Cooperation Forum of Northeast Asia does seldom operate. In fact, there is no Cooperation Forum in Northeast Asia. ASEAN Plus 3 provides opportunities for consultative dialogue among Northeast Asian states. EAS is similar to ASEAN Plus 3. The range of participant states is extended from East Asia to Asia Pacific. The primary features of ASEAN are kept in it. ASEAN considers it as a process, and the member states of ASEAN host EAS. Its participant countries are ASEAN Plus 3 countries: India, Australia, New Zealand. Since 2011, Russia and the US were allowed to enter it.
Let's assess how she's done. This has just been happening this week, so it's perhaps a little bit early to say, but I know you've been watching this very, very closely. How do you think she's done in forming a platform for, as you say, mid-level power diplomacy?
First of all, President Park started middle power diplomacy by making her successful debut on the multilateral diplomacy stage of ASEAN. She had opportunities to form a foundation for strengthening bilateral contact with ASEAN leaders. Especially, Indonesia is the only G20 member state in Southeast Asia. As middle power countries, Korea and Indonesia could be effective cooperation partners in East Asia. The two countries are able to discuss broad subjects both of security and economic issues. Second, President Park could meet leaders of Canada, Mexico, Peru, and the South Pacific Islands. It was rare opportunities. It is not that easy to meet them bilaterally, considering Korea's priorities and resource allocation of diplomacy. President Park should elicit support from the leaders of Americas if Korea make a decision of entering TPP negotiation. It is established a good environment for strengthening cooperation with those countries. Last but not least, President Park enhanced economic cooperation with Indonesia. The two countries formed a strong base to continue economic cooperation.
And in terms of Indonesia, Korea's got the capital resources, the technologies, the ability to invest. Indonesia's got the massive population base, massive resource base. How did those meetings go?
Indonesia is one of big economies. It is the fourth populous country in the world with 250 million people. The area of Indonesia is the 15th largest in the world, about 9 times of that of Korean Peninsula. So Indonesia is a huge consumer market. According to many experts, Indonesia is expected to be the 7th largest economy in the world around 2030. Korea provides Indonesia with capital goods and materials and invests into various sectors. Indonesia has lots of natural resources such as coal, natural gas, tin, nickel, and timber, and provides them for Korea. Considering the growth potential of Indonesia and advanced states of Korea, the two countries will foster each other by economic cooperation in a complementary way.
Let's move on. ASEAN in general, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. South Korea does have a free trade agreement with ASEAN. It was signed in 2006. How would you assess the economic relationship between South Korea and ASEAN at present?
As an economic region, Southeast Asia is an important market to Korea. It is a substantially huge and vibrant growth engine of the world economy. As of 2012, Southeast Asia is the largest overseas investment place, the second biggest trade partner, and the second largest international construction market of Korea. For the time being, Southeast Asia is expected to lead the growth of the world economy because it maintains high and stable economic performance. That's why ASEAN is economically important to Korea. 2 years after Korea-ASEAN FTA came into effect, the trade volume between Korea and ASEAN increased significantly. However, the utilization rate of Korea-ASEAN FTA is substantially low. It ranges from about 10 to 30% according to the reports of various institutions. It is 86% for Korea-Chile FTA, 78% for Korea-EU FTA, and 60% for Korea-US FTA. The two factors are behind this low utilization rate. First, the liberalization scope of Korea-ASEAN FTA is narrow compared to that of Korea-EU FTA and Korea-US FTA. The proportion of tariff-free items of Korea-ASEAN FTA is about 90%, while those of Korea-EU FTA and Korea-US FTA are almost 99%. For electronic products, automobiles, and steel, which are core export items to the ASEAN market, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam levy tariffs. Second, the conditions for application of rules of origin are tricky. Thus, the utilization rate of Korea-ASEAN FTA is low. The Korean government takes two tracks to overcome difficulties. First, it tries to alleviate the conditions for ROOs and extend the scope of tariff-free items through additional negotiation at Implementation Committee of Korea-ASEAN FTA. Second, it tries to strike bilateral FTAs with Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, and Malaysia to include electronic products, automobiles, and steel into the tariff concession plan. I think the Korean government would put more efforts into bilateral FTA negotiation with ASEAN member states. Practically, it is much more convenient to negotiate with 4 countries than with 10 countries altogether. And the 4 states are relatively big economies in Southeast Asia. So Korea could gain much more with the bilateral FTAs with those countries. The negotiation with Indonesia and Vietnam would go more smoothly and swiftly than with Thailand and Malaysia. According to many observers, the negotiation with Malaysia is almost stalled.
On the Southeast Asian front, things are actually looking very good for South Korea in Southeast Asia, and as you said, particularly with an up-and-coming player, Indonesia. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Dr. Kang. Thank you for being on Bizline.
Thank you.
South Korean society is fast approaching the Homo 100 era. Now, if you're a heterosexual man, don't worry, that's not what you think it means. What it refers to is the era when human beings will be commonly expected to live to the age of 100 or more. The downside of longer life, of course, though, is frailer health and more exposure to more diseases. But in South Korea, once again, technology is riding to the rescue. A range of ICT is now being applied to healthcare for the elderly and also for their caregivers. So if you have an elderly or frail grandparent, I advise you to watch the following segment very carefully.
In an era of rapidly developing smart society, aging trend that is progressing globally since the 2000s is developing just as rapidly. In a smart era, when smartphone and various electronic devices are prevalent in our daily lives, silver industries are also increasingly getting smarter. Now let's meet the ICT technologies used in the silver industries. A special device has been installed in the house of an elderly couple in their 70s, located in Yangpyeong, Gyeonggi Province. In their house, motion sensors are installed everywhere, including the bedroom, bathroom, and dining room, to detect movement of the couple. Infrared light sensors embedded in the motion sensors check the elderly person's body movement in each place every 10 minutes. The motion data collected from this device is sent to a fixed telephone in the house based on Zigbee wireless communications technology. The phone transmits the information to a dedicated server.
활동량 감지기로 사용자의 활동량 정보를 수집하고 이를 근거로 건강 상태에 대한 사전적인 판단을 하고 필요한 의료 활동가의 연계를 도와드리고요. 실제로 상황이 발생한 때에도 응급처치가 가능하기 때문에 이에 따른 의료 비용을 줄일 수 있습니다.
The fixed telephone only has buttons rather than number keypad. By pressing the button for counseling health, it immediately connects to a health counseling center comprising of counselors who previously worked as nurses. These counselors also provide a service to make appointments with doctors appropriate for each symptom. If there is an emergency, such as being injured from a fall, the elderly people can press the button on the emergency pager and the text call will automatically be sent to their children.
마음이 사실 우선은 든든하다는 거예요. 이게 있음으로써 내가 어떤 응급 상황이 닥쳐도 빨리 대처할 수 있다는 이런 마음이 있으니까 마음이 든든하고 자식들하고 아들하고 통화하고 싶으면 그냥 아무 때고 1번 눌러서 통화하고 궁금한 게 있으면 여기 눌러가지고 거기 의료기관하고 이렇게 통화해서 궁금한 거 좀 내가 물어보고 그러니까 상당히 보탬이 되고 있어요.
매일 부모님의 안부를 확인하기 어려운 자녀에게 하루 전의 안전과 건강 상태를 문자와 인터넷을 통하여 알려주어 안심하게 하고요. 또 부모님이 계신 지역의 기상특보를 문자를 통해 자녀에게 전달해서 일상생활의 주의할 점을 알려주고 있어 반응이 좋습니다.
Going forward, smart silver businesses such as the service to remotely check on parents' health will likely to grow increasingly. According to Statistics Korea, South Korea's elderly people aged more than 65 exceeded 6 million this year for the first time. By 2030, the portion of senior citizens aged more than 65 will likely to exceed 20% of the total population. This is a society known as super-aged society. At this rate, South Korea is expected to become the fastest aging country after Japan in 2040. In line with this aging trend, silver industry market is likely to grow sharply as well. In particular, smart health technologies incorporating ICT technologies are being introduced one after another. Recently, the Ministry of Health and Welfare and a local telecommunications company have jointly introduced a launcher program. If we download this launcher to our smartphones, we can use various useful health information the ministry provides. This information includes dementia diagnosis service, as well as data on national pension or nearby hospitals.
현재 우리가 병원을 찾아야 할 때, 아니면 약국을 찾을 때 그 병원이 문을 열고 있는지, 아니면 약국이 문을 열었는지, 그리고 제일 중요한 건 또 병원에 병상이 있는지, 그러한 정보들을 사전에 우리가 평소에도 확인할 수 있도록 위치 정보 기반으로 해서 제공이 되고 있고요.
This launcher is specialized for the elderly people not accustomed to touchscreen smartphones. This program only recognizes precise pressing motions and doesn't recognize light touch. This launcher looked to it that the elderly people with weak eyesights can see the screen clearly by using larger font and contrasting colors such as green, yellow, and black. In case of an emergency, a person can call for help by pressing the SOS button. In 15 seconds, it will automatically be connected to 119. The elderly people can also designate a button to directly connect to their children.
지금은 긴급 구조 요청 기능이 이제 추가가 되어 있지만 앞으로는 어르신들이 위한 뭐 혈압 체크, 당뇨 체크, 그리고 여러 가지 운동 처방 이러한 모바일 헬스케어 기능이 추가가 되어 확대될 예정으로 준비되고 있습니다.
Electronic medical appliances used for medical treatment beyond simply checking and diagnosing people's health have also been developed. A small South Korean firm developed a product which enables a dementia patient to do rehabilitation exercises via therapeutic game contents after doing a self-diagnosis on dementia.
기존에는 어떤 이런 코트라스의 도구가 없이 단순하게 그 상지, 하지, 운동 지활로 시키던 것을 저희들 코트라스가 도입됨으로써 환자별로 해갖고 맞춤형 훈련이 되고 있습니다.
After drawing numerous training accomplishments, it saves the assessment data, turns the data into a graph, and prints it out. By sending this data to a community hospital, the patient can get treatment directly in liaison with the hospital.
기존에 PC를 쓰고 인터넷을 검색하고 이런 환자들 대상인데 그런 환자들 대상으로 실제적으로 전문화된 장비, 종이로만 해갖고는 한계가 있고 데이터에 대한 객관성도 나오지도 않고 그렇기 때문에 지금처럼 저희들 터치로 해서 뭐 키보드도 필요 없고 마우스도 필요 없고 단순하게 터치로 해서 모든 문제를 풀 수 있는
우리가 스마트폰을 이용한 혈압 측정, 당뇨 측정과 같은 그러한 여러 가지 헬스케어 서비스들이 제공되고 있는데요. 이러한 여러 가지 서비스를 통해서 우리 그 노인들을 위한 그런 여러 가지 복지 서비스들도 향후 확대될 예정입니다.
At the current aging trend, 1 in every 3 South Koreans is expected to be a senior citizen by 2040. Inevitably, high-tech silver industries for the elderly people who are familiar with ICT technologies are expected to continue to grow in the future.
The cold season is now almost upon us. How to stay warm? Well, there are a number of heaters on the market, but one kind of heater you probably won't find in South Korea is the kerosene heater. They're just not popular here, or at least until a very recent boom in camping equipment. Despite the customary lack of popularity of kerosene heaters, the world's #1 manufacturer of these products is actually South Korean. Let's meet this week's hidden champion.
Oil heaters have become an essential item from campers who enjoy winter camping amid a boom in the leisure business. In a picture that attracted international attention, former Iraqi President Saddam Hussein was shown cuddled next to an oil heater in a desperate attempt to overcome the cold. This oil heater was made by the Korean company Paseco. The company is the leader in the world oil heater market, maintaining a 35% share. At one store that sells camping items, there has been an increasing number of customers who come in to buy oil heaters for camping ahead of the winter season. Paseco's oil heaters that are reserved to be sold this year jumped 128% from the previous year.
캠핑할 때는 부피가 제일 어렵거든요. 짐을 많이 수납하기 때문에 부피를 최소화할 수 있는 난로가 좋은 것 같은데 괜찮네요.
This family is an avid user of Paseco camping heaters. Camping has become a fun and memorable event thanks to the heater, especially at a time when there is a huge daily temperature range.
저희가 아이랑 같이 이제 캠핑을 하다 보니까 일단 위험한 거는 제외하게 되거든요. 따뜻하고 이렇게 날씨가 쌀쌀할 때는 아이들하고 할 때는 감기 때문에 걱정이 많이 되잖아요.
휴대하기도 편하고 그리고 뭐 안전하니까.
Paseco first started the oil heater business 39 years ago. The company has focused on making household heaters, but in the 90s, when Korea's economy started to do well, the demand for heaters began to shrink. This was one reason the company decided to aim for the global market.
저희가 이제 사실 석유난로를 시작하게 된 배경 중에 하나가 저희가 이제 심지를 만들어서 이제 대기업에 석유난로를 만드는 대기업에 납품을 했었던 게 이제 1차 시작이었는데요. 한국 시장이 이제 아파트로 가옥 구조가 바뀌면서 석유난로 수요가 줄었어요. 그 당시에 그걸 오히려 역발상으로 생각해서 완제품을 만들어서 수출을 하자. 국내 시장은 적기 때문에 수출을 목표로 해서 이제 석유난로 완제품을 개발해서 수출을 개척해 나가기 시작했습니다.
It was not an easy move for the small Korean company to venture into the overseas market, especially with oil heaters that were already becoming unpopular. The key factor which determined its success in the global market was the company's technology. The company focused on creating a heater wick with outstanding durability compared to the wicks made in the UK, which dominated the market back then. It also concentrated on developing the burner, which is the key component in the oil heater.
석유 난로에는 핵심 부품이 두 가지가 있는데요. 이제 심지하고 버너가 두 가지가 있습니다. 저희가 자체적으로 설계를 하고 그거를 생산을 하기 때문에 그건 역시 품질 개선 및 유지를 할 수가 있는 게 우리 회사의 장점입니다.
But quality alone was not enough to satisfy the meticulous overseas buyers. Since gas and electric heaters have a higher chance of fire-related accidents, there are safety standards to meet, especially in developed nations.
본격적으로 이제 석유난로 수출에 집중하게 된 건 1994년도에 우리나라 그 유수의 대기업들도 미국 시장에 수출하려고 했으나 미국의 UL이라는 규격이 너무 따기 힘들어서 다 포기한 상황이고, 근데 저희가 이제 기회라고 생각하고 그 중소기업 그때 규모로서는 이제 감당이 어려울 정도로 큰 투자를 했고.
After years of investing in research and development, which came from 5 to 6% of the money made from annual sales since 1994, the company finally received the UL mark, which is the United States Safety Standard recognition. The company's heater has also passed the Japan Heating Appliance Inspection, gaining confidence in its safety aspect.
해외 국가별로 조금씩 차이가 있지만 기본적으로 화재 예방을 위하여 어느 방향으로 전도되더라도 10초 이내에 소화되어야 하며 이때 누이랑도 50g 이하여야 합니다. 또한 심지 조절기나 소화 안전 장치의 경우 5,000회 반복 작동에서도 이상이 없어야 하며 또한 배출가스도 일산화탄소에 대한 이산화탄소의 비율이 50ppm 이하여야 합니다.
Paseco exports household oil heaters to 40 countries around the world, backed by the company's reputation for quality and safety. The company's heaters are an essential item in Saudi Arabia.
저희가 이제 중동에 이제 난로를 많이 파는 회사로 유명한데요. 중동에는 저희 독자 브랜드로 수출합니다. 캐로나라는 브랜드인데요. 우리나라의 뭐 삼성이라든지 LG 정도의 인지를 갖고 있어요. 그래서 아마 이라크에 올해 처음으로 저희가 이제 광고도 하고 그다음에 대리점을 2개를 냅니다. 아마 중소기업으로서는 그 이라크에 대리점을 내는 게 저희밖에 없을 거고요.
A lot of overseas buyers come to visit looking for oil heaters ahead of the winter season, which shows how popular the Paseco heaters are.
This is the first time I try to do kerosene heater business because it is start to be popular in my country. Kerosene makes popular because they are easy to move, and many houses they have a central heating system. But after the oil increase the prices, they cannot find a solution to use the central heating. So many of them they start to use independently their own heaters. In that case, kerosene heater is a good solution.
The company is focused on producing new products targeted at domestic campers, as well as household oil heaters for the overseas customers. Paseco has sold around $50 million worth of oil heaters last year alone, holding the #1 spot in the global oil heater market.
바라건대 해외 시장에서는 새로운 시장과 새로운 바이어를 개척하고 할 수 있고, 국내에서는 그 발전된 기술을 가지고 좋은 제품을 만들어서 국내 시장에서도 점점점 이게 시장을 키워가지 않을까 생각하고 있습니다.
Paseco has acquired an unrivaled position in the oil heaters market, which is considered to be a declining industry through its continuous product development and improvement in safety. The company has succeeded in enhancing Korea's industrial standards in the world by holding the #1 position as an oil heater manufacturer.
It's set in the very center of booming Northeast Asia. It's a virgin market for most of the products and services we all take for granted every day, and it's actively trying to lure overseas investment. Yet North Korea has signally failed to attract much in the way of global capital. Why so? The answer is very simple. It comes down to two words: international sanctions. North Korea, due to its political and military misbehavior, finds itself starved of economic development funding. Is there a way for the regime to move around this situation? Let's take a look.
Is North Korea the next big untapped investment opportunity in the global market, as legendary investor Jim Rogers suggested in a series of recent media interviews? Still, the majority of foreign investors shy away from the country, well known for its totalitarian regime and its reputation as a rogue nuclear state. Could North Korea, with its vast supply of natural resources and a rather skilled and unbelievably cheap workforce, ever succeed in luring enough foreign investors to restore its ailing economy?
우리 인민이 다시는 허리띠를 조이지 않게 하며 사회주의 부귀영화를 마음껏 누리게 하자는 것이 우리 당의 확고한 결심입니다.
But about a year later, North Korea's economy doesn't seem to have improved as much as expected. The country's per capita income stood at about $1,278 last year, which is equivalent to 1/19 of South Korea's. Under such circumstances, the new regime with very limited options chose to open the country further to the outside world by facilitating foreign direct investment across North Korea to bring prosperity to its people and the nation.
90년대 중반부터 북한이 경제난을 겪다 보니까 경제가 상당히 침체되고 자체 인물의 노력에도 해결이 안 되고, 그러니까 대외 협력을 통해서, 특히 무역을 통해서, 수출입을 통해서 이게 위화를 걸고 해야 되겠다.
In a hope to boost foreign investment, North Korea introduced a new law on economic development zones in May. With this law, the new leaders aim to expand special economic zones across the nation.
이번에 5월에 조직 개편을 하면서 개발구법을 만들어낸 그 법조항을 안에 보면 지방 소속으로 개발구를 만들 수도 있고, 이 개발구는 외화도 쓸 수 있게 되어 있고요. 여기서 만든 상품들을 내수 시장에 판매가 가능하도록 이렇게 되어 있습니다. 이 얘기는 뭐냐면 외국인 기업이 들어가서 유치하고 거기서 고용하고 거기서 만든 상품을 내수 시장에, 그것도 국제 가격으로 팔 수 있다는 것을 의미하기 때문에 지금은 개별 기업들이 들어가서 자유롭게 무역 활동을 할 수 있는 것을 열어놨다고 보아집니다.
According to an annual World Investment Report by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, foreign direct investment in North Korea has steadily increased over the last 3 years. North Korea attracted $79 million in foreign direct investment in 2012, up 41% from a year ago. Despite a steady rise, the investment amount remains at one of the lowest levels in the world. And the majority of foreign investment probably came from China, rushing in to grab mineral reserves that are largely found in the northernmost part of North Korea.
북한 내에서 직접, 그러니까 단독 투자나 또는 합작 투자나 이런 방식으로 들어와 있는 외국계 기업이 350개 정도 된다 그러거든요. 그 중에 한 150개에서 200개 정도는 중국 업체입니다. 분야별로 보면 압도적으로 많은 건 역시 광산 쪽이죠. 광산 쪽 업체가 뭐 한 100여 개 정도 이상 되는 것 같고요. 그 다음에 물류 쪽, 그리고 건설 부분 쪽도 있고요. 그런 게 한 40개 정도씩 된다 그러고요.
After Pyongyang introduced the 7.1 economic reform measures in 2002, money from the Middle East and Europe has been the next biggest source of foreign investment in the country. In Pyongyang, Egypt's Orascom Telecom Media and Technology Holding currently holds a 75% stake in North Korea's only 3G network operator, Koryolink. France's Lafarge also owns 30% of a cement plant, while Pyeongsu Pharma joint venture is a partnership between Paracel Zeus, a Swiss investment and management company, and Pyongyang Pharmaceutical Factory. Despite a steady rise in foreign investment, lack of infrastructure and lingering concerns of geopolitical risks remain key obstacles that undermine more overseas companies from investing in the regime.
만약에 북한이 뭐 개혁 개방을 하겠다고 활짝 일어난다 하더라도 외국인 투자들은 일단 그 유엔 제재가 있기 때문에 상당히 어려운 부분이 많아요. 핵 문제를 둘러싸고 유엔 제재랑 이런 것들이 그 대외적인 문제들이 일단 해결이 돼야 되고, 그리고 북한의 내부적인 문제인데 내부적인 문제는 사회 인프라가 지금 안 돼 있기 때문에 투자하려면 내가 인프라까지 갖고 들어가야 돼. 북한에는 있는 것이 인력하고 땅하고 그 북한 사람들이 가지고 있는 가장 기본적인 기술 그것밖에 없어요.
The rogue nuclear state continued to challenge the world with nuclear and missile tests early this year, bringing on tougher economic sanctions for the country. Such international sanctions have led some foreign investors to withdraw their earlier investment plans.
2006년도에 1차 핵실험했을 때는 그 1억 달러 정도 오히려 철수했어요. 했고 2009년도 2차 핵실험했을 때도 예년 대비 10분의 1 정도밖에 투자가 안 들어갔고, 이런 식으로 핵 문제가 제일 큰데 이 부분은 북한의 본격적인 투자가 들어가기 위해서 제일 먼저 풀려야 될 부분이고요.
Many investors abroad still seem to doubt whether the regime's leaders are serious about economic reform, despite various policies and measures that have been announced. Priority should be put on efforts to prove its willingness to experiment the market economy, at least to follow the steps taken by China or Vietnam.
예전에 북한의 특구 정책이 뭔가 해안가에 특구를 만들어서 기술과 자본만 이렇게 빨아먹고 체제에는 영향을 안 주는 일종의 모기장식 개방이라 그랬거든요. 이걸 이제 북한 내수까지 특구를 열겠다라는 제한적이지만 그런 이제 신호거든요. 그래서 이게 이제 앞으로 어떻게 될지 이게 관심이 큰 거죠.
저는 북한이 개방을 꼭 한다고 봐요. 특구를 하나씩 열면서 어느 시점에 가서는 열어놓지 않을 수밖에 없어요. 북한 주민들한테 지금 개혁 개방하지 않고 이렇게 경제 생활이 생활 수준이 어렵고 이런 생활이 계속 장기화되면 오히려 체제 붕괴 위험이 더 있을 수가 있어요. 그러나 열어놓고 먹고 살게끔 해주고 그러면 내 생활 수준이 올라가고 이러면서 북한 사람들은 거기에 만족하면서 오히려 체제 정권 유지를 하는 도움이 되지 않을까.
If North Korea is really serious about reviving its moribund economy, it must stop military provocations and prove that it is fully pledged to reform and open the country to the outside world, which it must do for its people and its own good.
And that's all we have time for on Bizline this week. But do join us next week. We'll be coming to you from Kang in southern France, where MIPCOM 2013 is underway. And MIPCOM is the world's largest entertainment content expo. How a South Korean company is doing down there? We'll find out. But that's all for now. Do join us next week. I'm Andrew Salmon. This was Bizline. Thanks for watching and goodbye.